But when I first started my business and I was trying to get my foot in the door in the industry, I had a living situation that kind of went south. And so I lived in my car for about a year.
We are here with Ishak, one of these people in the industry I've known for a long time, but this is actually the first time that we're having a conversation. He's rubbed shoulders with some of the biggest names in the industry, from 3DMJ to, well, quite frankly, a lot of people that I haven't even heard of yet. So, Ishak, how you doing, bud? How's life treating you?
I'm doing well. How are you? What are you sipping on there?
I'm sipping on some tea, man, and reminding everyone that I am big, and I am a big boy.
What kind of tea?
Jasmine.
Jasmine tea. Jasmine tea is very good.
Appreciate you, man. So, we're going to get into your history in working in fitness, which we've talked a little bit already. Now, I want to dive into what got the start, because you've been in coaching for a little over 7 years now, or thereabouts. What got you into it?
Yeah, so let's see. Before I started coaching, went to formal schooling for nursing. Before formal schooling for nursing, I worked as a personal trainer for a bit. Before that, this really just started as a means for me to improve my own health and body composition. Because when I was a little bit younger, I was a little bit obese, pre-diabetic, and yeah, it was just as a result of mismanagement of lifestyle variables. I was young, and everybody always has that little bit of a glow up as they grow up. But through my own journey, I found that this was something, improving body composition, exercise science, learning about the sciencey stuff about improving overall body composition. It was through that journey that I really discovered that, oh my God, this is something that really sets my heart on fire. And at the time, I had been going through nursing school, and I was at my fifth and final semester. So I went through nursing school fully, clinical rotations, putting IVs in people, working on my patient care. I was great at what I did, right? But it wasn't just like my heart was not in it. So at my fifth semester, I made the decision to not take my boards, and I moved out to Cali to pursue my dreams. Looking
As
back,
one does.
yeah, looking back, it was a little bit of an impulsive decision, but it was a decision that I would not take back because it kind of threw myself in the deep end as far as figuring out what life is about. Through that and through my own pursuits, I eventually started my business, Hawk Fit Coaching, and I have been in business for 7, going on 8 years now. And before I had started my business, okay, this is something that only if you've been following me for a while you'll know. But when I first started my business and I was trying to get my foot in the door in the industry, I had a living situation that kind of went south. And so I lived in my car for about a year, okay? And I lived in my car for a year. I still had my clothes folded in the back, all neatly organized, had my supplements. I would wake up first thing in the morning, go to the gym, or I would go to a coffee shop early morning. And that's when I really started a lot of development for the back end for what would become Hawk Fit Coaching. As I was living in my car and as I was like working on my coaching business, I was also working 2 jobs. So I could get out of the situation that I was in and also have some fluff to put into investing for the business endeavors. And so eventually saved up enough money, got my own place, built my coaching business, and that's when like the doors kind of started to open in the industry a little. And I started to get really good with networking. So that's when I started networking with people like Matt Ogus and Chris Elkins and a bunch of other kind of like big names in the industry now. And that's when I also spent a lot of time traveling to when expos were cool. I don't know, do people still go to expos nowadays? I feel like
I
that
don't
was
think expos are still like a very popular thing, but I remember the golden YouTube era where going to the expos was like the coolest thing.
Yeah, it was like the 2012, 2016 time frame. Yeah, during that time, I was just traveling to different expos, meeting people, trying to make a name for myself. This was like 2016, 2017, like heavy networking. And it was through that I kind of like started to build a little bit of a name for myself in the industry. I had competed. Um, by that time that I was like building a name for myself, I had competed like one time. And so it was right as I started to go into my second season, my second contest prep. Um, and yeah, my second contest prep happened. It was a successful contest prep. Um, and I've competed four times now. I've had four seasons. I'm getting kind of lost in the woods, but yeah,
You're good.
I lived out in Cali for 7 years, San Diego, and it was about until like 3, 4 years ago I moved out here in the Rockies, and it was a great decision. It was a great decision. The people in my
I don't
life are
blame you.
different. The people I have actually like rock with me, and they're better than me. They're better than me,
Mm.
and it inspires me to be better in other areas of my life. And uh, the gyms out here, I'm kind of spoiled with the equipment that I use, so that's also a nice little perk.
I
There's some
see that on your stories, man. Every time I see you working out, I'm like, God, I got to get out to that gym. That gym looks great.
Yes, I'm quite spoiled. I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to gym kit. That's just because I don't know. I
I get
geek
it.
out about mechanics. I've used a lot of different equipment from different manufacturers, and it's like once you experience all these different kits and you know a little bit of kind of like smart stuff about them, it's hard to kind of go back to something that's less than when you've experienced like a machine that's like holy shit. For example, a lot of Arsenal pieces. I don't like Arsenal's engineering. Uh,
Really?
a little bit too blocky. There's like some tweaks that I would personally make to their engineering. I hit them up a couple times on Instagram. I'm like, you guys should let me engineer your pizzas, but their leg press doesn't make sense. If you've seen their leg press, it's like the back pad and then this weird seat pad and then the
I'm
butt pad.
currently using their leg press right now in my program, and I'll give you that one. Their leg press is not the best. I will give you that.
Let me give you something. Put something at your back to where it makes it flat with the butt pad. It makes the biggest difference. And it doesn't make sense from an engineering perspective because when you're leg pressing, you don't want a lot of lumbar flexion occurring. So when you're moving through that eccentric phase, it's making you a little bit more prone to lumbar flexion, which low exposure to lumbar flexion, I see it as a good thing, okay? But if it's consistent high exposure to extreme ranges of lumbar flexion under load, that's where I think some problems can typically occur. Um, and by saying this, I don't mean like lumbar flexion is bad. You're not going to spontaneously combust just because you have a little bit of flexion in your RDL or you have a little bit of flexion here and there on your leg press. But you want to definitely avoid the extreme ends of that, especially when you have more complex details with regards to what's going on. So, like, load is a complexity in an exercise. Let's see, the range of motion you're moving through could be a complexity, intensity could be a complexity. So, it's like, okay, we want to try and minimize our risk of injury if all these different moving puzzle pieces are part of the variables within my ability to execute this exercise
Yeah, it
properly.
makes perfect sense. I know exactly what you're getting into with it. It's you want to limit risk as much as humanly possible, and then you want to set yourself up in a way to be able to replicate efforts consistently as time goes on, to progress as time goes on. Yeah, I'm tracking you from a distance here.
Nice. I'm glad.
So, what are you up to right now, man? I mean, coaching's the big thing, but is there anything else you have in the works?
Coaching is my main thing right now. Yes. I in my free time I like making content sometimes to help people. Let's see what else. I may do a my first in-person practical here in the Rockies. Let's see what else. Just a couple other things I'm cooking on this year that I'm sure if you're following along, you will hear about.
Love it, man. All right, so I've got some questions for you here. Some things that questions we do get pretty often from trainers that are struggling, and to get some perspectives on things and maybe help them out. But my question for you, because you do have such a storied history with the networking that you've done and really brush shoulders with so many big names, and not just from a social standpoint, but from their expertise and their ability to give a consistent product. People I would say are some of the top coaches in the industry. But in your opinion, as a coach and competitor yourself, what makes a good coach great?
What makes a good coach great? Well, I think there's a lot of variables that make up a great coach. I think number one, their heart being in it, okay, is number one. Like if somebody doesn't care about, like you're literally taking someone's money. Like you're not only responsible for getting them from point A to point B, but you're also responsible for doing that in an ethical manner. I think that's a huge responsibility, and I think there's no room in the industry for people who cookie cut as far as nutrition programs go, as far as resistance training programs go. And this reminds me of a quote. This is a huge number one, but like Jesus. It reminds me of a quote from Ryan Doris, okay? The Natty Pro on Instagram. Ryan, if you're watching this, I hope you're doing well, man. But
We'll tag them below.
it goes along the lines of never fake passion because you will always be shown up by the person who lives and breathes for the thing that you claim you just so happen to love. I'm kind of like jambalaying it, but you get
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say, right?
Absolutely. You to truly be passionate, you have to live what you're doing. It has to be something that is a part of who you are. And when you're faking passion, you're really only acting it out in very small, brief periods of time. Because just like your guy was saying, I think when you are pretending to be passionate, all you can ever do is have those split second little shots of time when you are showing passion. The other guy, he's living that 365. He's going to outperform you every time.
Every time. Every time. I'm one of those people. But yes, so passion being number one, that's very big. An ability to take it on the chin sometimes that you could be wrong, okay, and you don't fucking know it all, okay.
Yes.
There's something referred to as Dunning-Kruger, which we could maybe speak about later, but people sometimes like I'll give you a real time scenario of Dunning-Kruger. I'm scrolling on social media and I see these young kids, younger than me, okay? They're talking about some high complex shit, okay? And I think to myself, how the fuck do you know this information, okay? And it's often coming from a place of they don't know that information, but rather they are just repeating what they learn from
Yep.
people, which isn't necessarily a wrong thing, but you have to have this level of self-awareness where it's like, okay, hey, maybe I don't really understand this topic. Hey, maybe there's a small degree of like imposter syndrome there. And it's only until like you really address those things that you can really assess topics based off of the different confounding variables that influence it. Like, okay, like addressing black or white thinking, for example, um, and addressing your own biases at times. Not only when it comes to and challenging your own biases, not only when it comes to like how you approach things, but also how you communicate that information, right? So yes, you don't know it all. Passion. Those are some of the big ones. Let's see what else. If I were to name something else, um, empathy, right? And understanding how big of a role understanding psychology comes into play when it's not only just communicating with people, but it's also like getting people to effectively change their habits and be able to maintain those changed habits long term. That's something that's really big, especially within a coaching practice, because it obviously it depends. It depends on the person, but um, you can't just implement here are your macros, here's your training program, and expect someone to follow it, especially if it's someone who isn't far along in their own journey. So it's kind of like, okay, you gotta maybe like trim the fat and just like understand where that person is coming from sometimes. Which now that I think back to, like, sometimes it's hard for me to think back to the misconceptions that I had, when I was
Mm.
coming up, and so it's tough, but just try to put yourself in their shoes sometimes.
I couldn't agree more. I do believe that being able to check your ego and understand that you don't know everything is huge. And the Dunning-Kruger effect, that confirmation bias, where really I think people sometimes feel that when you just know the what, like we were talking about before with nutrition, that it is a little bit more of a nuanced thing with understanding the why behind things. Because fitness isn't right and wrong. It's part of why it's so hard for, I always say that the average person, but the average gym goer that doesn't have a background, it's really hard for them to understand that the answer is every time except before C. That whole thing of it's always situational for when you apply things. And there's always these little things that might change how that answer goes or what the right answer is. At least
Yes,
in my opinion.
that's a very good point. And in the industry, you will often find camps of thought when it comes to a certain
Mm.
approach, right? Or this new paper came out, or it's like this side versus that side, and it's like, what is this? High
Oh,
school?
the research based community as a whole. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got you.
So I always like to say, like many things in this industry and in a lot of people's journey, the answer always is somewhere in the middle. Okay? You always want to avoid the extreme ends of thought or extreme camps of thought. Not everything has to be so rigid as well. I think oftentimes a lot of people in this industry, they'll bicker about minute details, but it's like, okay, when you actually get together and you break bread with this person, it's like, okay, we agree on like 90% of the same shit. So it's like, okay, maybe there's that 10% you could disagree about, but I think, so long as people can find some sort of common ground and better educate the masses together about the big rocks that actually influence progress, I think that's sort of leaving the industry a little bit better than I guess we found it, which I think is the ultimate goal of like leaving your stamp on something.
That's what I think the research based community really is to just get the things that actually work and then disregard a lot of the fluff associated with it. I agree with that. Okay. I like that, man. So I got another question for you. So one of the things in personal training, and especially that people that shift into online coaching, they think they can kind of work a little bit with everything, and that practical side or more black and white side of what competing can be. Do you believe that a coach can be a coach for anything in sports as far as bodybuilding, weight loss, or general health? Or do you feel that people need to specialize in one or more of these categories of online coaching? I think I
Well,
just threw a world jumble at you there. Let me know if I need to
no,
say
that's a
that
very,
again.
that's a very good question. So I would not be. I haven't had very many coaches. Like most of my seasons, all my seasons I've done myself. Um, so I guess that's kind of, I like figuring things out. I like, when things are hard. But anyways, um, I would not be the person I am without the people that have played a role in my development. So it's like, okay, even if you don't have coaches, maybe there's like people around you that are smarter than you or inspire you in some way. And those are kind of the people you should be surrounding yourself with. With regards to finding a speciality, reminds me of a principle in exercise science referred to as principal specificity. Obviously, there are things that you can dabble with as far as body composition changes go if you're a personal trainer, right? And I don't want to say this to discourage people from like, hey, this is the lane I want to run in, But just understand that there are people who have been doing it for like years that are probably way better and smarter than you. And those are kind of the people you should be learning from. When it comes to my own coaching practice and how I like to distinguish myself in the industry, I don't try to, I just try to be myself. But
I think that distinguishes you, though. It's that whole element of being original distinguishes you from the pack just as a byproduct, which I think is like the easiest way to be successful is just, hey, be yourself. You'll find your lane. Don't worry about it.
yeah, so Coach Cassim, if your audience is familiar with Coach Cassim, he has a brand called N1 Education, and he teaches people about complexities when it comes to biomechanics and exercise science and stuff, okay? So, how I see my own coaching practice is I'm not a fucking biomechanist. Like, that's not my lane. And teaching it at that level, that's not my lane. And I'm 100% cool with that. I can still teach people things about biomechanics, things about anatomy, but if I don't know if I were to be comfortable educating them about these more complex things because Cassim is a person that does that really well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's also not I don't want to take away from him, It's also like I want people to go to him.
But you follow down that rabbit hole, man. I mean, you're going to end up going, oh, well, I'm not the best in this field, so, well, I can't work in it now. It's like,
Listen,
oh my God.
I'm pretty damn good at what I do. I don't like getting
Oh,
on
that I have no doubt.
too often, but I wouldn't have been in business this long and I wouldn't be where I am if I wasn't good at what I do. But especially, this is not only like important for you to find yourself, but this is also important in terms of it's like it's not fucking about you, it's about the people you're helping. So if someone
There it
has
is.
some issue that you cannot address, you need to take it on the chin and outsource that person to someone who helps them a bit more specifically. Like, it's not a problem.
You can't work with everybody. Something we see a lot in gyms where it's like the performance coach wants to take on the little old lady and trainer. It's like, dude, what are you doing? That's not your person. Send her to somebody else. Like, I'll send you the performance client. Let Tamara work with the little old lady. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is really important, especially when it comes to things related to like functional health and medicine type stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just gets, it matters. Because at that point, I mean, one, if you're taking a client on that you're not having the skill set to properly help them, I feel like you're wasting not only just the money, which that's its own thing, but the emotion. How desperate people are to lose weight, how desperate they are to get from where they are to where they want to go, or to not hurt, or whatever their goal is. You're just kind of spitting in the face of that just because you want a paycheck.
I would go as far as saying that person is a scam artist. And
Hey, there it is.
I would go as far as saying that I consider that as malpractice. That's something that if a doctor made a wrong decision or a dentist made a wrong decision or a lawyer, any other profession, they would literally lose their license to practice. So I think it's the same thing, especially if you don't outsource a client to someone that can help them. And it's just like, it's an ego thing.
Yeah. It's ego and greed. I feel like it comes into context with everything. It's, there's an element of you have to like develop the skill set to work with people proficiently, but I think it's a range of, all right, when are you learning and when are you just, all right, you're just that guy working with anybody that'll pay you money.
Yeah, absolutely.